Hello everybody, Ellie here for WhoCulture. I hope you are all doing well. Now I've got a couple of things I want to talk to you about, a few news things, so this video will have timestamps throughout so you can jump to the things that you are interested in. And let's get straight into it, shall we? So first of all, we had the announcement of the new writers joining season 2. Now there were 4 new names announced and they were Juno Dawson, Inua Ellams, Pete McTighe and Sharma Angel Woolfall. Now of those names, I'm familiar with 2 out of the 4. And in terms of the Whoniverse, it is also familiar with 2 of those 4 names. In fact, it's the same 2. So obviously the name Pete McTighe is a name we've heard a lot in recent times because of his involvement with the war between the land and the sea. But he also wrote episodes in previous seasons of Doctor Who, series of Doctor Who, such as Kablam and Praxius. So although he is new to this new rebooted era of Doctor Who, he's not new to Doctor Who as a whole and obviously is very much involved with the war between the land and the sea. Now another name that you might have seen in the Whoniverse before is Juno Dawson. In terms of televised Doctor Who, this is completely new territory for Juno Dawson. However, she has written the first scripted Doctor Who podcast, which was called Doctor Who Redacted. You may also have recognised Juno from the official Doctor Who podcast. She was one of the hosts for the 60th anniversary specials coverage, as well as the Church on Ruby Road. She's also written some Doctor Who audio dramas and a novel as well. But in terms of televised Doctor Who, this is a new step for Juno Dawson. Now the other 2 names are entirely new to the Whoniverse. I can't say I'm familiar with either of these 2 new writers, so I'm excited to see what they're going to bring. In fact, as a whole, I'm excited to see what these 4 new writers bring to this next season of Doctor Who. Let us point out though, just because they are new writers does not necessarily mean they're going to be good writers. Some of these writers, particularly Juno Dawson for example, do not have a lot of credits to their name and this is a new step for them. I'm not saying that they're going to be awful by any means. I'm very intrigued to see what they bring, but I think the biggest thing here is it's nice to see some new writers coming into Doctor Who. We've spoken before about how we feel that although it's brilliant to have Russell T Davies writing episodes, Stephen Moffat there, you need to be looking to the future of Doctor Who, so you need to be finding the next Russell T Davies, the next Stephen Moffat. So to have these new fresh pair of eyes, hands, minds working on Doctor Who is very exciting, and I'm very intrigued to see what it is that their stories bring to Doctor Who. The other thing that I find very interesting, and it's something that you can be on the fence about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but Inua Ellams and Juno Dawson have both said that they've been Doctor Who fans since they were children. So to have fans of Doctor Who writing Doctor Who, such as even with Stephen Moffat, and we've had previous writers who are fans, and there are some people who should say fans should not write for their favourite shows. But I would argue that sometimes the fans are the best people to have writing the show because they know what the show needs and they know the lore and the depths of the show. And sometimes that can be a real positive thing from a writing perspective. Obviously, on the other hand, you may have those who are maybe too precious about certain things, don't want to change things, or sometimes it's good to come in with fresh eyes and entirely new perspectives. But I think a good balance. So it will be interesting to see, especially what these fans of Doctor Who bring as writers for the show. The next thing I want to talk about is the cartoon that we've seen in the trailer for season 2, the teaser for season 2. So it was teased by Russell T Davies in Doctor Who magazine that the cartoon man you saw, his voice is an old friend of the show. Guess who? Now I won't linger on this for too long. We could sit here all day just reeling off a load of names. To my mind, I don't know why, the first name that came into my head was Dan Starkey, who you'll know as the actor who plays Strax. Don't know why Dan Starkey came into my head, but that was the name that instantly jumped. Then I thought about it a bit more, and I have a feeling that this particular episode may be set in America. And we know that we still have the Pantheon floating around. So then I thought, if it's an American voice, maybe it's Neil Patrick Harris. Honestly, like I said, we could reel off loads and loads of names. I think Danny's guess is Mark Gatiss, which honestly would not be a surprise. It could very well be Mark Gatiss. Maybe Gabriel Wolfe is doing another voice here, the voice of Sutekh. Who knows? Let me know in the comments down below, who do you think will be voicing this cartoon that's climbing out of the screen in season 2? I also want to talk to you about Jo Martin. aka the fugitive doctor. So Jo Martin is doing the rounds at the moment because she has a series of fugitive doctor Big Finish audio dramas that have just been released. So she was chatting to Doctor Who magazine about the audio adventures and these new stories for the fugitive doctor. But obviously it's inevitable that talk is going to turn to the origins and the backstory of the fugitive doctor and when we first met that character. And this is what she said about the fugitive doctor. All I know is that when I took the job and they were trying to explain my doctor to me, I was told how it was going to work, that I was the first doctor. So I was like, okay. So there are a few ways that this can be read into. Before I get into those readings, let's just look at it as what it is to start with. It kind of does put to bed all the speculation about where the fugitive doctor falls in the timeline of the doctors. Although we kind of all assumed that she was a pre-Hartnell doctor anyway, but that was never explicitly stated on screen, but it's kind of not a surprise to hear this said here, because it was what we all thought anyway. But as I say, this can be read into in a few different ways. One of which I feel could be problematic, one of which I feel like is highly more likely. So there are those who are looking at this as her saying that she was told that she is replacing William Hartnell as the first Doctor and now she should be considered the first Doctor. Now if that's the case, that's an issue, because William Hartnell is, to an audience, the first Doctor. You can't change that. You can introduce pre-Hartnell Doctors, but the first Doctor is always going to be William Hartnell. So I can see why some people might take issue with this from that. However, I think the more likely situation here, and I kind of feel like it is self-explanatory in the quote that she gave, is that she was basically told in simple terms where her doctor fit in the timeline, to get a better understanding of who her character was when she was then going to go and play the character, to have a bit of backstory in her mind as an actor, rather than going into all the nitty-gritty of all the details of a story that was not going to be until another few episodes later. They basically said to her, think about it as you're the first Doctor. You're before the first one. You're number 0.5, you know? So they just said you're the first Doctor because that made the most sense, rather than trying to explain the nitty-gritty details of who the timeless child was, which wasn't relevant to this episode. And as I say, we all assumed that she was a pre-Hartnell Doctor anyway, so this shouldn't come as a surprise. I very, very highly doubt that this quote is confirmation that someone said to her, you're replacing William Hartnell as the first Doctor. I think it was just a way of simplifying where her Doctor fits in the grand scheme of things, so that she, as an actor who may not have had much knowledge of Doctor Who previously, can get a better understanding of her character. That's genuinely, I think, what it must have been. Also, when you look at it, technically, neither she nor William Hartnell is the first Doctor, because we had all of these children who were being experimented on by Tecteun. So technically, the first Doctor is the child that fell through the portal and was found by Tecteun. I think the way that we kind of look at it, because a lot of people have commented on how, well, it was William Hartnell who we saw steal the TARDIS and run away. That was the first Doctor. Obviously, the Timeless Child story arc does put that whole situation into question, but I don't think it does. I think, yes, she refers to herself as the Doctor, but I feel like when William Hartnell stole the TARDIS and decided to run away and have adventures, that was when the Doctor became kind of the Doctor we know now, not the Doctor that works as part of Division, not the child that was experimented on, not the Gallifreyan that still stuck around and, you know, had a life on Gallifrey. When they became the Doctor as we know them, that's when William Hartnell decided, I'm going to steal a TARDIS and run away. So that's how I'm gonna choose to look at it. The thing is, with this whole fugitive Doctor situation is, if I'm being perfectly honest, I haven't given this Doctor much thought since her episodes. I mean, I won't hide the fact that the Chibnall era really did lose me for a while. Part of that being because I was at uni at the time, so it wasn't a priority to sit and watch the new episodes of Doctor Who. But also, I did watch the first episode, and I wasn't as gripped by it as I was by previous stories. I don't know, there's something about the Chibnall era, and this is not me just going to stand here and just talk rubbish about the Chibnall era, because we've done plenty of that, we've given plenty of sides to the story, but for me personally, I just feel like there was something missing, and I can't quite pinpoint what it was. To me, it feels a little bit more like people playing Doctor Who as opposed to it being Doctor Who. But I mean, that's just my personal thoughts on the series. I just wasn't that gripped by it. And so when it comes to the fugitive Doctor, she doesn't stick in my mind very much because it was in an era of the show that didn't stick in my mind very much. Do I feel like perhaps there was room for more to be explored with the character, and that's perhaps why she's not so memorable, because there wasn't so much to her? Yes, definitely. Which is why I think these Big Finish audios are going to be very, very good for the character, giving that character more story and more to explore. So that's great. That is great. And let me also just say here, none of this that I've been saying here, whether it be about the Chibnall era as a whole, whether it's about this whole Jo Martin quote, none of this is me having a go at or blaming Jo Martin herself. She's absolutely lovely. She talks about her character with such positivity. She clearly cares about the character and the role she plays within the Whoniverse. And she obviously wasn't involved in the writing or the creation of her character or the episodes. So that's perhaps why I'm more critical of the Chibnall era as a whole, as opposed to Jo Martin or the character that she played with what she was given. You can only work with what you've got. So yes, and also with regards to the quote here, again, she's just reciting something that someone else has told her. That's not her saying, I'm the first Doctor. She's just saying, that's what they told me. That's what they said to me to make it simpler so I could understand what the hell was going on. That's basically it. We have got season 2 coming very, very soon. Hopefully we'll get some release dates announced in the coming weeks, maybe the coming months. Hopefully the coming weeks. Please, BBC gods, we would like to know when we're going to see season 2. But don't forget to let me know in the comments down below who you think is going to be voicing this cartoon character. I'm intrigued to know who you think it might be. Not that I know the answer, we'll have to wait and see, but I'm just intrigued to know who you think it might be. In the meantime, I've been Ellie for WhoCulture, and in the words of Riversong herself, goodbye, sweeties.